Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Jen. I'm your host of Blockchain Banter, and I'm here with Dr. Mark Richardson, project lead at Bancor. Mark, thank you for joining me. I know this was kind of a last-minute Blockchain Banter that I invited you on, but after our discussion yesterday, I really felt like it could benefit more than just myself. So I appreciate you joining me. Thank you. So I named this series because I do want to make this into a series. This is made up DeFi garbage. And the reason I did this is because you and I asked you a question yesterday. It turned into not necessarily a debate, but I just wasn't understanding this particular concept and why it was portrayed in the industry the way that it is, or understood the way that it is, I guess. And you had referred to one of your previous presentations. I believe it was at ECC in Belgium, 2024. And you had said throughout, like at one point in your presentation, this is just made up DeFi garbage. Without me going too far into this, maybe you can tell us a little bit about what this presentation was. And then we can kind of go into the fee tier, which is really where this discussion started.
Yeah, sure. So I made a presentation as a part of the token engineering track. This is last year, so this is an old presentation. This is one that happened in ECC Brussels. And the reason I made it was because I was getting, I don't want to say frustrated. Let's just say I was becoming increasingly cognizant of the misconception across the industry, both its users and its protocol developers, that the fee paradigm on an AMM actually means something, right? Because it really started off as a marketing tactic. And I think that, you know, in a way, too many people are drinking the Kool-Aid, and not many people have stopped to really interrogate whether or not it makes sense for a liquidity provider to charge a fee of any kind. And so the motivation for that presentation was to demonstrate that it's provable that there's no such thing as a fee on an AMM. And so that's why I made that presentation. And I referred to it as made up DeFi garbage.
Right. Okay. So you say that it's more of a marketing tactic. Break it down for us a little bit. Like why? Now I know that you did this in your presentation, right? You tend to be a little bit technical. I say this all the time and I think it's wonderful, right? I think this is why when you say something, I kind of ask you to break it down a little bit and I put myself in this, sort of normie category. I'm not super technical. So as a liquidity provider, this is why I titled it like Misleading Industry Narratives, because you say it's the consumer, it's the user, but it's also the developers, right? I have been under the impression for the last 5 years that I've been in crypto that you provide liquidity, you earn trading fees. This is what we've all come to know, right? So marketing, why do you see this as a marketing sort of gimmick? I mean, I guess because it works, right? But
well, for example, I mean, just now in the last few minutes, you said that, I'm known for being too complicated, or the things that I say are too
technical.
To break it down. That's where it came from, right? To understand what you're doing when you're like the financial instrument that you're buying when you provide liquidity to an AMM is technical. And so it's exactly the marketing departments around DeFi that have said, no, users won't understand this. Let's just make something up. That's what a fee is. Because if you tell users they're earning fees, they're like, oh, okay, I get it. It's unfortunate that it's not true, but that is what motivates them to provide liquidity to protocols. And the truth is inconveniently complicated.
Okay, so let's do this then, if you will, with me. Say it how you want to say it, right? Explain it how you want to explain it. Get as technical as you need to. And if I'm not understanding, then I'm going to stop you and ask you to maybe break it down a little bit or give me an example or something of this sort.
Yeah, I don't think it needs to be made. I don't think it is complicated. It's like it's just more complicated than stake your tokens here and earn fees.
Right.
So the problem with asserting that liquidity providers can charge a fee at all is that they also determine the price, right? Or at least the instrument that they're buying has prices hard coded into it, right? If you're using an AMM, using the XY equals K model or something else, those are still, pricing standards. And the fee that's injected into those curves changes the curves themselves. And so you can show, via a couple of different means that it's easy to move the fee around in such a way that it no longer means what people think it means. And when you have um, two contradictory, but otherwise equal formulations for the same thing, like that contradiction means something isn't true, right? This is why we use proof by contradiction in mathematics. But I think there's an easy heuristic that you can follow for this, which is that let's examine the case where a fee is applied and does make sense. And I think in our conversation, the example we were using was that there's like a customer, a merchant, and then something like the Visa network that extracts a fee from every transaction. So I think we were talking about maybe a restaurant or something. So let's treat the restaurant as the liquidity provider, and they are offering you, menu items at a certain price. And then you, the customer, are, browsing the menu, deciding what it is you want to buy. And then when you come to pay for, the goods and services the restaurant provided you with using your credit card, the Visa network or the MasterCard network or American Express, even though they didn't provide you with the food and they didn't, provide you, the customer, with the cash to purchase anything, they extract a certain, a small amount of that transaction value as a fee for themselves. Now that makes sense because we can determine who the fee is going to, and that they weren't otherwise a participant in the transaction there. So that's a legitimate fee. The problem with saying that the restaurant itself is charging a fee is that all of the prices, 100% of the prices, are a fee, right? But you don't think of it that way. But when you buy a hamburger from somewhere, it's not like the fee and the price of the burger are separate, right?
Right.
Price is the fee. 100% of the value of the burger that you bought is the fee. So you can't, if the restaurant said, well, I'm charging you $10 for this thing, but that's like $9 for the cost of the burger plus a $1 fee. It's just that's made up, right? The restaurant prices the whole thing at once. There's no decomposition into, and even if they wanted to, they could itemize, this is how much lettuce costs, this is how much tomato costs, and so on, and that's fine. But the consumer just looks at the price of the whole burger and whether or not they're going to buy it. And so the restaurant can literally use any itemization they want, including erroneous ones. So they could say, actually, the cost of the burger is only 50 cents. And so $9.50 of it is our fee. Or they could say the cost of the burger is $9.50 and 50% is our fee. They can actually use any number and it doesn't affect the transaction. And therein lies the proof that the fee is not possible to be charged, or at least it disappears into obfuscation when the person who is pricing the item is also the person charging a fee. It's just part of the price. These things come together. And so when we, from the outside, look at that transaction, it becomes impossible to determine what the fee was, right? There is just the hamburger that changed hands, and there's just the cash that changed hands. And
So, Mark, really quickly, you're saying it's impossible from the outside, right? So I'm the consumer, I'm the one who's buying that. It's impossible for me to know but it's not impossible for the restaurant to know. And in this case, the restaurant is the liquidity provider. So to them, they
So it
still
actually,
have a fee.
no, it's impossible for them as well, because they can change the numbers and it doesn't affect anything.
What numbers
They,
do you mean?
they can change the itemization.
Right.
So if in their account system, it said that they're charging $9 for the burger plus a $1 fee or something. Or let's make it more specific. A lot of restaurants have like charge corkage, right, or a surcharge on weekends or public holidays or something like that. That's really just increasing the prices of everything on the menu by 5% or 10%, whatever the surcharge is. And so they can say, yes, like this is the price of the menu item plus our surcharge. But that doesn't mean anything. The surcharge can actually be any number. They could, for example, say that all of the menu items today are 50% off, but we charge a 2x fee on top, which brings everything back to the way it was, right? And this is
Right.
similar to like how Black Friday sales work, right? And I think we've seen people wising up to this, is that what they do is that they increase the prices by, 25% or something the day before, and then say that they're, reducing the prices by the same amount the next day so that they can advertise that they're selling it at a reduced cost, but they're actually not. There's just the price of the item. And so this is when you allow yourself to move the prices around and discounts and surcharges and things, it's arbitrary. You can add any number of things. At the end of the day, the only thing that matters is the total. And for the restaurant, for Walmart, whoever is doing this, they can itemize it however they like. They can change their minds, right? Maybe instead of selling a television for $100 and charging a $10 fee, they can instead say, actually, we sold the television for $10 and charged a $100 fee. It doesn't change the account keeping at all. And so if it doesn't matter what the fee is, then it's not.
So when a liquidity provider goes to provide liquidity on an AMM and they choose a fee tier, what are they actually doing then?
They're choosing a spread. They're choosing the difference between their first asking price and first bidding price.
Okay. Can we do
And
a visual? Are you able to share your screen? Can we look at Carbon DeFi? Because I know that we've spoken about this before. We've spoken about fee tier versus spread. You do not like fee tier. You definitely prefer spread, and we've spoken about spread before. We have fee tier, or Carbon DeFi as fee tier on there because this is what has been used and accepted by the industry, right? But let's look at it in terms of Carbon DeFi as our example. Show us where that actually is, because here's the thing, it's not like it's trading fees. Liquidity providers are under the impression that, or the majority, right, that every time their liquidity is traded against, they're earning this fee. So when they choose that, show us what the spread is. Okay, I see you're sharing your screen now. Thank you for doing this, by the way.
Okay, so yeah, my pleasure. So here we're looking to create, this is a concentrated liquidity position. Apparently the price of Bitcoin is down to 86. I didn't even realize. Okay, so on this side, this is the BTC that we're offering to the market, right? So the market price is, or we might call the mid-market price, is this line down the middle. And then there's a small gap, and then the first price that we're offering. And then on the reverse side, this is where our USDT is in this case. You can see that there's a small gap, and then our first bidding price. And so the distance between that first bidding price and first asking price is the bid-ask spread. And so you can see I can make it, I can change the, let's do a custom one over here. So if I set it to something like, 1 point, let's see, Oh yeah, okay, that was a small one. Okay, so you can see when it's at 0.01, the gap is very, very small. And this means that for every Bitcoin that you're selling, when you buy that Bitcoin back at a lower price, you only make a small profit. But if you increase the bid-ask spread, then for every Bitcoin you sell, when you buy it back again, you buy it back at, 0.1% at a lower price. The example that I've usually given to help people understand is if you're operating a pawn brokerage or a used bookstore or something. Imagine that your policy is that you'll buy any book for $1 from people who walk in off the street, and then you will price it at $2. That means your bid-ask spread is $1, and that's all that's happening here. But on an AMM, the problem is that the price of books changes. So every time you buy, maybe you buy the first book from someone off of the street for $1, but then every time someone else comes to sell you another book, you buy it for 1 cent less, right? So the first book you buy for $1, the second book you buy for 99 cents, the third book you buy for 98 cents, and so on and so forth. But each one of those books, you still price up by $1. So the first book that you bought, you're going to try and sell for $2. The second book you bought, you're going to try and sell for $1.99. The third book you bought, you're going to try and sell for $1.98, and so on. That's what AMMs do. And this is why you do not earn a fee on every trade. That's just a lie. Because if you just buy 100 books and you don't sell any of them, then all you've done is go short a lot of cash and long a lot of books. You need to then rotate that book inventory back into cash to realize a profit. So you don't actually earn a fee on every trade at all. You have to buy a book and then sell the book. And that's where you earn your, fee. But it's not a fee. It's just a buy low, sell high trading strategy.
Right. Okay. So in the case of the book, you buy one for $1, you sell it for $2. Nobody's paying a fee to you. That's just your profit from making that buy and sell. Right.
Yeah. And it doesn't exactly. And if someone does have this policy, for every book I buy, I mark it up by $1 and offer it back to the market for that dollar. Imagine if, we were analyzing their business and they said, I bought 100 books today. And so I've made, $100 in fees. And it's like, but did you sell any books? It's like, no, but I earn $1 on every book I buy.
But you didn't actually sell the books. You have to sell them to earn that dollar. Okay. So is this how?
But that's how AMMs work.
You froze for a minute. You said that's how AMMs, and I lost
that's
you.
how AMMs report fees, right? Sorry, that's how AMMs report fees. If the price drives down and all you did was buy, let's call it the book token, right? If you buy 100 book tokens at a fee tier of 10%, they're going to say you've earned like 10% of that volume, right? Let's say you bought $1,000 worth of book tokens. They're going to be like, wow, congratulations, you've earned $100 in fees. You haven't. All you did was buy 100 book tokens or 1,000 book tokens. You need to wait to sell them again at a higher price to realize that fee. And when you do it, the AMM is going to report to you that you're earning fees in that direction as well, right? So
is that how AMMs are actually reporting them? Because that was my next question. Like they show these APRs, right? Or APYs, or, this is what you've earned so far on your liquidity. Is that how they're actually doing it? Or are they doing it as if the buy and the sell had both occurred? Because they're clearly different.
No,
right?
they just ignore that selling is necessary. They just say, whatever the fee tier is multiplied by volume is how many fees you've earned, which is completely made up. Like it doesn't stand up to any kind of financial scrutiny. As a liquidity provider, your task is to buy and sell things. For everything you buy, you want to sell those things back at a slightly higher price. And for you want to buy back at a slightly lower price. That is the only way to, that is what the business model is in liquidity providing.
Okay, it's interesting that you're talking about a liquidity provider buying and selling, because generally we view a taker as buying and selling and a liquidity provider as providing liquidity. Like a lot of people consider this to be like
Well,
passive income, right? Like they're earning passively by just providing liquidity. So you're speaking of them in terms of actually performing trades themselves. So maybe
I mean, of course
explain.
they are, right? For someone to buy some, every, there's a lot of misconceptions in what even buying and selling means for some reason. I mean, I would have thought that these things would be self-explanatory, but that's the industry that we live in. If the number of buys always exactly equal to the number of sells. There's no such thing as more selling than buying or more buying than selling. That's another DeFi garbage term, right, or concept. For someone to buy something, someone has to sell it to them. So if a taker comes to an AMM and buys your book token, it's because you sold it to them. And if someone comes in and sells a book token to you, it's because you bought it. It is active trading. You
So
are prescribing, you are subscribing to the AMM's prescribed trading strategy, but you are buying and selling. You are trading every time someone interact with your liquidity.
So this was another discussion that I recently caught was, LPs versus traders. And are LPs actually traders? Because a lot of them don't see themselves as traders. But as you're pointing out right now, they are subscribing to
Well, that was
this.
the idea. Yeah, but like the reason they don't consider themselves traders is because the marketing departments around DeFi don't want them to think that they are traders because that's stressful, right? And
Is it
so
still
this
stressful
is
if you're
where it
not
came.
really doing anything though? I mean, you're adding your liquidity, right?
Well,
Why
it's
do you,
I think it's better to not get people to think about it too hard, right? That's the marketing objective. You
the
want people
less
to
you
buy
think,
this
the better?
financial instrument. Yeah, the idea is we don't really want users to understand what they're doing, right? That's the industry perspective. Because if they did understand it, it's less likely that they would do it.
When Bancor first came out with the constant product AMM, right? 2017, 2016, 2017.
Mhm.
You've often said it wasn't meant as a financial instrument, right? Or it wasn't meant for community members to be the liquidity providers, to be making the markets, right?
Yeah, there was
So
no
and
way for users to provide liquidity to it.
there was no way at all. I guess not, because
No,
if they're,
it was it was
go ahead.
exclusively for projects. The idea if a project has a token, it's their responsibility to make it liquid. The it was one of the I mean an interesting innovation, but kind of a predatory one was in 2019 2020 sort of era that projects decided that instead of the project having to shoulder the burden of making tokens liquid, instead they can move that burden onto their users, onto their communities,
Do you think
which
that
saves a
was
lot of costs.
for the project? But okay, and then as a result, because it turned out to not be such a great move for liquidity providers at the time, especially, this is where the fees came in. Were fees introduced around that same time, or was it more just, participating in the ecosystem and supporting the project by providing that liquidity? Do you recall?
No, no one was providing liquidity, I think, to support their project. Right. This is where liquidity mining, the fee earning paradigm came from, was to try and get community members to shoulder this burden so that the project didn't have to. But the reason why they want their community to do it is because it's not very profitable. But the mechanism whereby you are effectively purchasing a short gamma option, or the brownie and ratchet, or whatever heuristic you find the most helpful. It was always there, right? There was always a fee setting, and even the Bancor founders called it a fee. It was always there, but it was never marketed. It was never you know it was never presented to individuals using blockchains as something that they can use, because it's kind of a bad idea, and generally a net cost for projects. So yeah, but it's pretty clear why this idea of put your tokens here and earn fees was so attractive, because people who didn't question it were easily tricked into providing liquidity for projects, essentially,
Do you
and that was
see
always the
many?
design.
Do you see
And if
many
that wasn't
questioning it
enough,
now?
um,
Go ahead. If that wasn't enough,
no,
you don't see many
yeah, and
questioning it now.
if the fee earning calculations, which if the fee earning calculations weren't sufficiently massaged, um, I think the next great, air quotes, innovation was the idea of liquidity mining, which began with SNX. I think it began with SNX. I've found it very difficult to get to the bottom of it. And when SNX did it, it really wasn't too bad. Like I think that it was a legitimate like token distribution attempt, let's say, right, for people that are helping the protocol bootstrap itself when they were trying to develop things like synthetic gold and synthetic Bitcoin and that kind of thing. Like I think it made sense. But yeah, thereafter, the liquidity mining paradigm has continued to be the carrot at the end of the stick, this proverbial incentives that everyone likes talking about in DeFi so much. But yeah, it's still by and large used to convince people to do something that if they understood it, they might not want to do, right? Or because the financial instrument itself isn't attractive enough by itself. So it's heavily subsidized with other things. But yeah, it's not, you don't earn fees. There are no fees to be earned. You are participating in a very specific buy low, sell high grid trading strategy whenever you are providing liquidity to an AMM. No exceptions.
Mark, I think we might have a little bit of a lag, but I want to keep going with this. You said that you had created this presentation and you chose this as your topic because it was something that was just getting to you, right? What was it about this particular topic? Because we've had a few where we've said, like, why does the industry say this? And we'll talk about those in the future. But this particular one, what was it about the fee earning that really just got to you to the point that you based your presentation at ECC around this?
I mean, I've given a lot of similar presentations. I don't think that that's like that this one stands out necessarily. But I think that in that case, one of the things that really irked me was that the this idea of fee earning and that hubris has contaminated the like the academic treatment of these things. Like it's almost like an emperor's new clothes sort of situation. Like all of the people that have helped to prop up the fee earning convention are now forced to incorporate it into the models that they're using when they analyze and describe DeFi protocols. And it's just, it turns something, it makes it much more difficult, I think, to make legitimate progress in the way that these things are studied. Because, it's like we have to pay lip service to this marketing paradigm, even though it doesn't belong there. And, I think from an, I'm a skeptic and, a scholar, or at least I try to be. And I think that it's much more important to pay attention to what is objectively true rather than maintain maintain a narrative that's required to serve a marketing purpose, right? I think one of the things that I've said is that especially in, it's not just this stuff, right? It's also in like DeFi white papers themselves. The white paper culture has changed. They used to be very, very scholarly sort of articles, and now they're just pitch decks, really. And so I don't know, maybe it was a convenient target, to help highlight or illustrate just how far DeFi has drifted, right? Where it's continuing to entertain a provably stupid concept, and that if we abandoned it, it actually makes some of the analysis and things a lot easier to process. And yeah, it was, I think, a canary in the coal mine sort of situation for me when I started to see these academic articles coming out that was still paying lip service to it. So I think that that's what motivated it.
It's almost as if the marketing had been accepted as a type of like AMM mechanism, right? Like this is actually a part of this design or the mechanics of an AMM versus just something that had been created to sell liquidity providers, to the point that it's being referred to or used in academic papers. So
Yeah.
rather than just backtrack and say, okay, look, these really aren't trading fees. I mean, the industry has done this with things previously, right? We didn't realize that this was going to surface, right? Like sandwich attacks or something like that. It's like we can't just deny that they're there, or, instead we have, I mean, Carbon DeFi is immune to them, right? There are other projects that are working on creating something where users can be more resistant to them than they are just going in there and using an AMM as a taker, right? But we're at least acknowledging that this is an issue. What is it about this one in particular? Is it the loss of users? Is it the fact that if somebody comes out and says, hey, this is an actual issue, then maybe they have to suffer the consequence of potentially losing users, or acknowledging that this number that they're throwing out there that's so pretty and appealing to liquidity providers isn't actually valid at all? Why do you think we're doubling down on this one in particular to the point that it's in white papers? You don't know?
No,
Not you.
I stand by it. I stand by the same reason, because explaining AMMs any other way won't you won't be able to access the same demographics. Because as soon as it's hard, right, as soon as someone has to think about something, you're going to lose 90% of the users. And so the message is stake tokens earn fees. Even if it's not true, it has to be maintained, because blockchain users, for better or for worse, don't like thinking about things. And so to keep that message simple is the priority. And it's, like, I mean, it comes back to, like even the beginning of this call, right? And, I've been in so many situations where someone says, this is too complicated, just make it easy. So in a way, the users are bringing it on themselves, right? They want to be lied to. And these projects are very happy to lie to them so long as they're using the protocol.
Do you think that by them saying make it simple, it's actually lying? I mean,
Well,
yes, they want it
yeah,
to be simple so that they understand it, right? I mean, these are complex things we're talking about when you're looking into the depths of DeFi, right? It's not simple. And
that's the lie. The lie is that it's simple. Like whenever someone says to me, just make it simple, all I hear is, just tell me a pretty lie.
not
Like
break it
it's
down in
not.
terms I understand, right?
No, I mean, I do that, but sometimes it's going to take a long time, right? The assumption that you're not going to have to expend any effort to understand these things is a mistake.
And I think that is really what users want. I just recently read an article where it was like, this is what they want, is to do nothing and to make money. and our
Yeah.
industry. And this was somebody who had written books on Bitcoin and who I shared it with you this morning. I thought it was a really interesting.
This is one ringtone told over the course of several rings.
Sorry.
And the story it's telling
That's
you
okay.
is to answer your phone.
That's an interesting ring, Mark. Okay, so I thought that this was an interesting read because he was obviously just fed up with the direction that the industry was going. He was talking about how much noise there is and how we've kind of just created this illusion for ourselves, those of us that are here still, and for the users also. And that the mindset of the users currently is, I want to do nothing and earn money. And you've said this previously yourself. Do you think that we're just trying to appeal to that now? Do you think we've just given in to this?
Yeah. I mean, the very unfortunate thing about maybe blockchains all over the place is that, I've had so many discussions over the years about like utility and demand and so on and so forth. And really, like what it comes down to is that there is only really demand for one thing, and that is, as you said, right, to do nothing and be made rich somehow, right? Like that's what people are asking for, and I guess in a sense that's what investing is for, which is why I don't really, I guess, consider myself an investor. Um, but I think in general, like the protocols that I'm working on are the things where you have to do some work, but if you do good work, you can you can reward yourself with the fruit of your labor. It's about building tools and teach a man to fish type thing. Whereas the protocols where it's like, buy this token or stake this token here or something and get 200% APY. Like this is the traps. I'm reminded of that meme, right? Where someone's like, well, how stupid is this animal that it would walk right into this trap? And then, sees a 200% APY for doing nothing and thinks that that's a reasonable thing to happen. So yeah, the crypto movement really began with a whole bunch of narratives, and you could, I know that there are those who take very seriously the fundamentals of cryptocurrencies and blockchains, right? The verify, don't trust, the departure from the nanny state sort of financial system and that kind of thing. This is all totally valid, and I'm definitely on that page. But you cannot subscribe to the verify yourself, don't trust anyone paradigm, and at the
You
same time,
cannot. Oh, okay.
and at the same time, ask people to explain their protocol to you like you're five. Those are very different things, because now you're trusting someone to simplify something for you. It's your responsibility. And yeah,
But even if
you
they are
are
doing this sort of
expecting that
research,
someone has to produce a pretty graphic for you. What's
sorry,
that?
I think we have a lag. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just pointing out that if you're depending on someone else to explain something to you before you can use it, then you're not verifying anything.
So, I mean, this is what white papers and things were for previously, right? Like, yes, you're taking their word for it still in that same regard. They're right in this, but this used to be more of like a technical paper that's explained the mechanics behind these certain things, right? Like whatever project it was around what product they had built. This is what the white paper previously was. So even if they do their own research then at this point and they refer to a white paper, if we're just using that same marketing gimmick that we see on crypto Twitter and everywhere else, then how are they expected to actually learn these things? Are we just lowering our own standards so that we can? I mean, we're just lowering our own standards. We're taking the easy way out then as builders so that we can appeal to more users.
I mean,
That's it.
I learned these
That's all there
things.
really is to it.
Sort of. Yeah, like I think it's, we should be careful to excuse the idea that someone is required to provide you with, a decent white paper or something. Because again, you still need to trust them to do that. They can write whatever they want in their white paper. You're right that the standards have slid. It used to be that the stuff in the white paper actually matched the underlying financial theory or whatever of what the project was actually doing. Whereas today, white papers are really written for investors, right? Not users of a protocol. Like they are literally just pitch decks. So they don't really have that same kind of value that they used to. But even then, someone can write a very technical white paper that sounds very convincing, that has absolutely nothing to do with the protocol that it's attached to, right? That's another totally, reasonable expectation from someone who is attempting to scam you, for example. And so even then, you are, or it could be that they are highly convinced of their interpretation of the theory, but that their interpretation is wrong. And so you need to, to kindle that inner skeptic and assume that not that you're being lied to necessarily, but that the information, the conclusions of these white papers or research articles or whatever are wrong, right? This is the most important thing, and I think that this is certainly something that the postgraduates in DeFi are very familiar with. That if someone writes something, it's your responsibility to try and prove it to be false. Like you go in with the assumption that everything written everywhere all the time is wrong. And when you can't falsify it, doesn't necessarily mean that you trust it or believe it, but your confidence, right, in the conclusions of those authors becomes stronger over time. You become more convinced. But you never assume that something's true, right? Science is the process of working out what isn't true, not what is. And as a skeptic, I really like the definition that you're trying to hold as many true beliefs as possible and as few false beliefs as possible, and those aren't the same thing. So constantly, reviewing how it is you became convinced something is true is an extremely important exercise. So yeah, like what are you supposed to do is the same as what you should have always been doing, which is assuming that all of the information that's being given to you is malicious and a lie, and then interrogating it for yourself. That's the verification ethos of blockchains and cryptocurrency to a T, right? If anyone goes in reading Satoshi's white paper thinking that Satoshi is correct, has already failed, right? The blockchain ethos. You need to read that white paper assuming that Satoshi is either an idiot or deliberately lying to you, and then challenging the proof of work mechanism for his blockchain that he proposed. And that's what makes Bitcoin strong, right? Is not people holding this thing up and saying, how smart is Satoshi and blah, 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 but assuming that it's probably, some criminal, arms dealer somewhere that's created this thing that's trying to, trying to selfishly benefit at the expense of others. And failing to show that that's the case is the thing that gives confidence to Bitcoin. And the same should be true of every protocol, right? You always assume that everything published is either attempting to mislead you or has been incorrectly, incorrectly analyzed, and that the conclusions are false. So you need to learn for yourself. You need to become an expert in these things.
We don't see this very often at all. Mark, we have about 15 minutes left. I want to go back. Do you mind if I bring up your screen one more time? Because you were saying that concentrated liquidity, providing liquidity is in a concentrated liquidity position is somewhat like grid trading, right? And I have heard users refer to recurring orders on Carbon DeFi as a type of grid trading. And I know, may I bring this back up?
Yeah.
Okay. So here we call it a fee tier. Would you mind showing us the recurring orders? on your screen. Okay. So here, I often refer to this as the spread, right? So just quickly, if you don't mind, or not quickly, I don't care. The difference between a concentrated liquidity position when you're referring to it as a grid trading strategy and recurring orders when it's being perceived as a grid trading strategy. Tell us the difference and what the spread means in each of these instances. Do you mind?
All right. Yeah, no, that's fine. It might be easier to do it as a, and this one's not going to be particularly profitable because actually maybe we can do something.
Do
here
it
that
how
says-
you want to do it.
Okay, so let's do something like this. And let's start with, I don't know, 100 WBTC, and we don't
Okay, so you're on the simulator page.
yeah, it's because to see the spread, you need to see it evolve in time.
Okay, so for anybody
Okay.
who's unaware, the simulator is a backtesting tool that Mark had created before Carbon DeFi was released to demonstrate what these new strategy types, these new, your bonding curves and your asymmetric liquidity is actually
Yeah.
capable, or it offers to users, right?
What-
So go ahead.
Yeah, so what the product does, but the spread is always the distance between the first asking price and the first bidding price. So here, we're always looking at where's the green border and where's the first red border. That is the spread. It's the gray area, right? So it's not this, I mean, there's a constant spread here, which is that gap between the two ranges, but it's actually always this height, right? So up here, all of the asks have been taken, so that's not super helpful. But you can see like in the middle, so like right here, see as our bids are being taken, the new bidding price, or the bidding marginal price, I should say, is this line right here. And our asks are over here. And so whatever price that is, which is around what, 118,000, and here looks to be about 112. So our spread here is $6,000.
Okay. I
That's the
understand.
spread.
So it's okay. And you're
And
not
if we do
making
it-
that every time somebody, takes your liquidity or trades against your position, right? Which is what we were talking about earlier, which is
Yeah,
what, most liquidity providers think, right? So
Yeah, you end up with a long position. Yeah. You end up with a long position and a short position. Every time you're selling something, long and short doesn't refer to leverage. You don't have to borrow anything to go long or short. It just means that you started with a certain amount of BTC. And so as you sell it, you're short a certain amount of BTC, right? We started with 100 BTC. And so when that BTC was being taken, we're short that amount, right? People say, oh, I've been shortchanged, or I'm coming up short. That's what it means in finance too. It means that compared to the 100 BTC I started with, maybe I've only got 90 left. So I'm short 10 BTC. That's what that means. And if you started with 0 USDT, which as we did in this case, then at this point in the simulation, we're now long apparently 11 million USDT, right? And so we need to get back to where we started, right? So it's only after completing the round trip that we can see that we have no short positions open, right? Because all of the BTC that we started with was 100, and now we've got 113. And we didn't start with any USDT, and we're back to 0. So we're not long any USDT. And the leftover that we've got, that 13.32 WBTC, is the profits from going short at a high price and then closing our short position at a lower price. And so this isn't a fee earning. This is literally the benefit of crossing your bid-ask spread.
okay. And the difference here is that you can create that spread yourself, because obviously these orders aren't overlapping, right? So you're doing the same thing in a recurring order or a recurring strategy as you are in a concentrated liquidity strategy. But concentrated liquidity strategy, they are obligated to overlap.
Well, yeah, because that's what grid trading means, right? So if we feet here, like maybe 1% or something, and we're going to do the same thing. We'll start with 100 WBTC. Okay, so what I want you to notice here is that there's still it looks like there's a bug in the simulator right now, so I apologize for that. But you can see that as the price is moving up through here, the bidding price and the asking price is still separated by a certain amount. Now in Carbon DeFi, the spread will actually slowly reduce over time, whereas on most AMMs it's maintained like deliberately to a constant amount. But that's fine. It's neither here nor there. It's just a slightly different paradigm. But yeah, it's still the distance between the bids and the asks that is where your profits from. And so here, like I think this last part of the simulation is bug free, so we can focus on that. You can see that for each tiny increment we move up through this asking liquidity, bidding liquidity goes up with it, right? So this, if we're selling here, the liquidity comes in behind it and says, I'm willing to buy back here. So if we go all the way through the range, we need to come all the way back through the range as well, just to make that small amount of profit. Because like, you know, as the price moves up, we're selling at every single price. Right? And so
Mark, you're
we
cutting
buy
out quite a
at
bit
every
at the
single one of
moment.
those price points minus whatever. Okay.
Maybe it was sharing the screen. But okay, so you were saying that you have to really go through every single time you buy, you have to go back and sell all the way back up, right? You're buying all the way down, you're selling all the way up.
Yeah, the fee that people talk about requires 2 trades, and they have to be in different directions. If you sell a certain amount of a thing, you need to buy that amount back. And
How
it's
can
only after
users
you've bought back the same amount that you can realize the profit.
when there's a pool, and I know we're coming up on an hour, so I'll let this be my last question for now. But when everyone's liquidity is pooled on a concentrated liquidity AMM, right? Or even a canonical like constant product AMM, you provide 2 tokens, everybody's liquidity is pooled, right? So how can you figure out what your fee, like what you're actually earning from that? They're telling you one thing and you're saying that this is not real, right? This is made up. How can they figure it out on their own what this actually is then if it's their liquidity that's being bought and sold?
I'm not sure what you're asking.
Well, how can they figure out what they're actually earning or if they're earning anything if they can't believe what they're actually seeing on an AMM or when they're providing liquidity?
You have to study it. You know, it's the same way that you are. I mean, it applies the same in DeFi as it does in every aspect of your life, right? How do you tell, you know, how do you know whether or not you should become a Mormon, right? When the Mormons knock on your door and tell you that, you know, Jesus lived in the United States and that Joseph Smith is, you know, here to save human race. How do you know if they're lying to you or not?
It's a little
Have to
bit
think
different
about it.
though. With Carbon
not.
DeFi, well, each position is its own position, right? Each strategy is standalone.
Sure.
In an AMM, it's all pooled together. So when you add your liquidity to the pool, how are you supposed to know that it's your liquidity that's being bought or sold? I mean, you can study it, right? But where can they actually see if it's their liquidity or not?
I mean, that's an implementation specific question. It's going to be difficult to speak about that in broad strokes, especially
Yeah.
because like AMMs like Trader Joe, like Uniswap, they actually do issue specific positions, and it's not pooled in the traditional sense. So, it is, there are ways to do it, but you still need to trust that the tools that you're being provided with are working correctly.
Right.
And it's the same for carbon DeFi, right? When we say that nothing's pulled together, we're just saying that, like it happens to be true, but you shouldn't assume it. You should actually go to the effort of making sure that what we say about our protocol is true. The same way that you should interrogate the Bitcoin white paper. Assume that everyone's lying to you all the time is the best advice I can give anyone.
And on that note, assume everybody's lying to you. And thanks for talking about this made up DeFi garbage with me today, Mark.
You're welcome.
It's interesting because it's something that I had believed this for so long, and I would get so frustrated with you about when you would come on to the calls previously and say, there's no such thing as a fee tier, or I would ask you, or you would refer to, and you'd say, I hate that term. I call it a spread. I prefer a spread. But after our discussion yesterday and after watching your presentation, I'm glad that we had the discussion we did, and I'm grateful that you came up here to have it with me once more for everyone else. I hope that they take something from this, even if it's fee tiers can be garbage. There's a lot of garbage. And what did you say? Everything you're being told is a lie?
Well, just that you shouldn't, just that,
you should go into it with this sort of idea, right? Don't believe everything you, go ahead.
Yeah, the whole DeFi ethos is about, in a way it's about self-empowerment, but also self-responsibility.
Yeah.
And so if you are waiting for people to tell you how things work and just accepting it, then you're, let's say, a soft target. But it's not just in DeFi that you should be applying this principle. You should be applying this principle everything in your life, right? Whenever someone on Twitter says such and such about some political figure or whatever, you shouldn't immediately say, thank you so much for breaking this down for me. The first thing you should say is, I wonder if
his motives
they are
or their motives.
I wonder if they're trying to trick me, or maybe they're just confused. Like there's this is the kind of, the skeptical mindset. And it just so happens to be extremely useful in DeFi because there's a lot of, malicious intent. Like there's no shortage of malicious intent and criminal activity and so on that is able to thrive because users do whatever you tell them to do. And so there's a very strong sort of self-preservation motive for taking that kind of skeptic mentality seriously in DeFi. But I think I would suggest that you adopt it everywhere, because if it works in DeFi, it's going to work somewhere else as well.
It's funny, really fast. And my last comment was, I realized tomorrow is Thanksgiving here in the United States. And you're talking about being a skeptic. Tomorrow, I think, is the 4th or 5th anniversary of my biggest loss in DeFi. And I only bring this up because I wasn't skeptical at all. And I was at that time, I'm going to get rich and this is what I need to do. And why should I even question? I honestly think it was like a 2 million% APY or something ridiculous. There were just a number of zeros in there, and I should have known better.
Yep.
But I was so caught up in the fun of it, and I had this huge FOMO for not earning anything and not, that I really wasn't skeptical enough. And I posted about it, and it was on Thanksgiving, and I was thinking, shame on me. I should have done my research. I should have stepped away versus FOMO'd into this, and I should have been with my son on Thanksgiving. So lesson learned. And from that point, I was much more skeptical, but I hope that me speaking about the lesson I learned will help somebody else kind of maybe take a step back at some point, Anyway, Mark, thank you again for joining me. Thank you to all of the viewers, present and future, who may be catching this recording. My DMs are always open if you have questions or suggestions for topics and things. If you want to pick Mark's brain on anything specific, DM me. Thank you so much for joining. And if you are in the United States, I hope everybody enjoys their Thanksgiving. Thanks again, Mark.
Thank you.